Welcome to the Income Outcome Show, a podcast publication part of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. The Income Outcome Show is dedicated to pharmacists, pharmacy technicians, pharmacy students, and all pharmacy professionals interested in maximizing their income and providing insights into living a financially free lifestyle.
All matters discussed during this podcast are for informational purposes only. Opinions expressed herein are solely those of Waypoint Strategic Advisors, LLC, and our editorial staff. Material presented is believed to be from reliable sources. However, we make no representations as to its accuracy or completeness. All information and ideas should be discussed in detail with your individual advisor prior to implementation. The presence of this podcast shall in no way be construed or interpreted as a solicitation to sell or offer to sell advisory services to anyone. Waypoint Strategic Advisors, LLC is not affiliated with or endorsed by any government agency and are not engaged in the practice of law. Content should not be viewed as an offer to buy or sell any of the securities mentioned or as legal or tax advice. You should always consult an attorney or tax professional regarding your specific legal or tax situation.
And now here are your hosts of the Income Outcome Show, Ben Coakley with Waypoint Strategic Advisors and Joe Castleman with Pharmacists Financial.
All right, welcome to this edition of the Income Outcome Show. I'm your host, Ben Coakley with Waypoint RX. I've got my team member, Joe Castleman with Pharmacists Financial. Joe, say hi to everybody.
Hey, everybody. How's it going today?
Awesome. Joe, what's the weather like in Texas today, man?
Well, it finally went back up. For about 3 weeks, it was straight cold, even in the teens, which here in Texas, especially Dallas, is unheard of. So, but it's almost 100 again, basically.
Yeah, Joe, for that poor schlub that's in International Falls, Minnesota, he is not empathizing with you right now, bro.
Yeah, he thinks, yeah.
So, all right, so I heard a great joke the other day, Joe, and I'm going to start this podcast off with this joke, and it's about a lady who walks into a pharmacy and orders some cyanide from the pharmacist. The pharmacist says, "Why in the world do you need cyanide?" And the lady explained she needed it to poison her husband, Joe. So the pharmacist, being the classic professional, looks at her and says, "I can't give you cyanide to kill your husband. You know, if I do, they're going to throw us both in jail." So the lady reached into her purse and pulled out a picture of her husband in bed with the pharmacist's wife.
Oh.
The pharmacist looked at the picture and replied, "Well, now you didn't tell me you had a prescription for that." All right, so this is kind of a little humor, little toilet trashy humor to get started here. So, Joe, today we're going to talk about something that's near and dear to our heart. We call it the complexity spectrum. And it's designed to actually help people evaluate what level of advice that they need. And what you have out there when you have people is you have, if you're on staff in a pharmacy, you got people who are on staff, maybe with no ownership aspirations, all the way up to people who own multiple businesses. We call them multiple business entrepreneurs, and everywhere in between. And Joe, I don't think I need to tell you this, but sometimes people need different levels of advice. Any thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I think there's two hurdles. I think the first is, do they need advice? And then the second is, if so, what type? Because there actually are different levels.
Absolutely. So let's address that first question first. Do they need advice? Joe, what are you?
No, Ben, I don't need any.
Yeah, Joe, you definitely don't take any of my advice.
I have everything figured out.
Exactly. No need for any of us. But yeah, so let's talk about, we hear all the time, hey, you know what? I don't need an advisor, or I can do this on my own. And I think when I hear that sometimes it's people maybe who are too proud to say, maybe I do need some help. One of my favorite stories is I was working with a gentleman and I said, I think we need to do all this and this and here. And he goes, "I got all that figured out. I got all that figured out. Anything I don't have figured out, you're not telling me anything new." And it wasn't about 6 months later, the guy called me back and he said, "When I told you that, I was completely lying to you. Everything you addressed, he said, I was so scared that I hadn't addressed a lot of that stuff that my flight or fight, my flight stuff kicked in. And so I just ran. I ran as far as I can go. And he said, I went home that night and he said, I stayed awake all night worrying about the stuff that you guys had told me. So I think so sometimes it's that. Sometimes people actually can do it on their own, Joe. If the level of advice is at the lower end of the level, at the lower end of the spectrum, I think people can do it on their own. The one thing I do tell people, though, is as your situation gets more complex, you will need the greater the chances, that you will need an advisor at that point. Would you agree with that?
I would, but what do you mean by complex, though? Do you mean has more investment accounts, has more kids, wants to be a business owner? I mean, what does that mean, complexity?
I think it means all that. I think it means the scope of the work that needs to be done to help somebody achieve their goals. So his or her goal. So a multiple business entrepreneur who has 4 or 5 businesses, Joe, or somebody who's on staff who's just trying to retire. Those two people need completely different things. And it's okay. It's okay. If you are on staff at a pharmacy, the good news is that you probably don't need as complex of advice, which means you're probably going to get maybe more reasonably cost advice at that end of the spectrum. When you become a multiple business entrepreneur, you're going to have to make some investments in the people that you have around you, because you're going to need people who specialize and understand, what you're going through. And I'm going to explain what each level of advice is right now. But yeah, so as you move up that spectrum and the level of complexity increases, then the level of advice needs to increase as well. Would you agree with that?
I would, absolutely.
Awesome. So if you are on staff and you have some basic financial goals, and you just want to retire, maybe put your kids through college,
or maybe get out of debt.
Get out of debt. Get out of debt. Joe, once you start putting 4 or 5 or 6 of those together, you might need a little bit more advanced.
Gotcha.
But if you've got 1 or 2 primary objectives and that's what you want to focus on, the investment advisor, somebody with a basic understanding of money management. These are the people that you run into all the time, who work for the brokerage firms. They're trained to help you with basic money management. Set some basic goals and try to accumulate some money. Like I said, if it starts to get a little bit more complex and you have 4 or 5 or 6 or 7, I have a great client of mine, and she takes care of her mom and her sister. They're completely disabled, and she is the only breadwinner. And she's a physician. She called me one day and she said, if something happens to me, that money is shut off, and my mom and my sister are going to be put out in the cold. She needed something a little bit more complex. She needed somebody who had a little bit more of an understanding of comprehensive financial planning. So you'll see people out there, when people start to go get certain certifications. Joe, you are a CHFC, a Chartered Financial Consultant.
Correct.
I am a certified financial planner professional.
Yes.
When you see people start to get those certifications, that means they are working on moving up this complexity spectrum to be able to deal with those types of situations. If this particular client would have come to me in when I was 25, 26, 27, I probably couldn't have helped her. Yeah, even if she knew what she needed at that point, Joe, I'm not sure I would have been able to provide it for her. So
you may have wanted to, but you may not have been able to.
Yeah. I want a toilet made of gold, but I can't have that sometimes, right?
I've got one for you. I'll sell it to you.
Okay, Joe. I don't invest in the precious metals. So
yeah.
So again, so you move from investment advisor to financial advisor. Somebody who has worked to move up to be able to understand more complex situations. The next level is the wealth manager. This is typically somebody a client who owns a business at this point. And this is more of a simple, but it's a holistic approach to wealth management. Maybe there are some time issues some time constraints being put on this particular person as it pertains to their business and stuff like that. So helping them think through and manage a little bit more of a complex situation. Joe, you own a business. I own a business. When I tell people how many accounts that I have to actually manage owning this business, and sometimes it blows their mind. They ask me, how do I do it? And I don't know if you've ever had that question asked to you or not, but it's quite an interesting thing when you're talking to somebody who has never owned a business, somebody who has. It's an interesting conversation because sometimes you get that deer in the headlight look. Like I don't know how somebody can manage all that. Have you ever got that before?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. So one of the things that when you move to this level and you start to get all those different accounts, a wealth manager typically will use some type of program, and it's either an online program or it's a software program that aggregates everything, gets everything into one place so everything can be managed in one system. Joe, I had a client one time. He had 17 different bank accounts. 17 different bank accounts.
Hopefully onshore, not offshore.
They were onshore, Joe, but let me compound the situation. They were at like 12 different banks.
Oh, yeah.
You can imagine this guy's life.
Checking his statements and trying to figure out,
Yeah, consolidating and reconciling bank statements. And the guy took a guy a week out of the month just to do that, right? So he needed something to aggregate everything into one system. Now, finally, the last level, that's the wealth manager. The last level is what's called the elite wealth manager. These are advisors and teams of advisors who are the creme de la creme. These people specialize in helping what's called multiple business entrepreneurs, people who are growing their business, growing how many businesses they have, growing their wealth to really, really, really tremendous heights. What happens there is these advisors have a complete understanding of true wealth management. And true wealth management doesn't necessarily mean money. That's part of it. But it also means time and energy. Understanding those things. Oftentimes, it's amazing, Joe, when I talk to people who are elite wealth managers, they have a fitness component to it because we're talking about energy, right?
Yeah.
You got to have energy, sustainable energy to be able to do all this stuff. Well, there's a fitness component. And
so how does an advisor become the creme de la creme? Do they just wake up and say, I am the best advisor for the most wealthy people in the country? Or like, how do they get there? Is it just based on experience like we have, or how do you get to that level as an advisor?
Joe, that's a great question. It's based on experience. It is. There's a lot of that, but it's based on a tremendous amount of hard work.
Yeah.
We pride ourselves. We go to all kind of different trade shows. We're constantly learning. We have what's called our book club. We have a meeting every Wednesday. We talk about books and ideas and how to grow as a team. We have coaches too. I mean, what you just said, we're constantly learning too. Yeah, we have a coach we've had on our payroll since 2006.
Yeah.
I tell him I can't believe I paid him that much money, but you know what? He has helped us hone our skills to become these elite wealth manager. Now, does that mean that we always have to serve in that capacity? No, we can be the wealth manager. We can be the financial advisor. We can scale it all the way down to the investment advisor if that's what people need.
Well, a lot of clients of mine are in the realm of where I'm acting as their financial advisor, but I'm moving them up until the wealth manager level. So the idea is that we want to grow with them. Absolutely, Joe. And I think that's one of the reasons that we're attractive to advisors like you at Waypoint, is because you feel like you've got the ability to grow into this elite wealth manager role. And we have the tools and systems and capabilities and team to allow people to be successful in doing that. So that's a little bit of the complexity spectrum. The next time we get together, Joe, what are we going to be talking about? This is part one of a two-part series here. Yeah, so part two, today we're talking about the different levels of advice, types of advice that you might need or want. But next time we're going to talk more about how to evaluate the advice that you might actually get or look to get and confirm that it's the right advice for you. And that can mean the actual person that you're talking about working with, or the company that they're with, or the program they have, but making sure that you know how to evaluate whether it's right for you.
Yeah, Joe, and I just have a question for everybody. Do people out there know that there's a difference between being honest and telling the truth? That's a great question.
I honestly don't know, Ben.
But you know what? Listen to the podcast next time, Joe, and you'll find out the answer. So, all right, we didn't talk about this at the beginning, but we have a special offer today. If you want a copy of this complexity spectrum to see what I'm looking at on my screen here, or you want a copy of what we call the 5 questions to determine what level of advice you need, feel free to reach out to me. My email is ben@waypointus.com, and my cell phone, you can text me, is 843-810-3983. Joe, if they want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
Yes, Joe at Pharmacists Financial, cell phone 512-294-7046. Ben, I had one quick question before you continue on. The different levels, do these imply that if a client engages an advisor at any one of these levels, that it implies that it's continuous? Meaning, maybe the first level of investment advisor, when there's only 1 or 2 objectives that they're looking to, is that something that kind of happens and then it stops? Or is that advisor-client relationship continue?
That's a great question, Joe, and it really depends on your needs as a client. If your needs start to change and things get a little bit complex, and your advisor hasn't grown with you to be able to address those complexities, we see this a lot, Joe. When somebody goes from on staff, a pharmacist on staff, or even a tech, and buys a business and buys a pharmacy. And they keep that old advisor on, but that advisor has no idea really what this person's going to go through in buying a pharmacy. I have a question for sometimes that I ask advisors when they're like, "Oh yeah, I can handle that." I'm like, "Well, do you even know what a DIR fee is?" and if they say no, then that's a telltale sign that they haven't educated themselves to the level where they need to be working with somebody who's trying to, or just recently has purchased a pharmacy. So, Joe, the answer is it depends. If they grow with you, yes. There are some people who their complexity situation never changes, so all they need is the same advisor. That's fine. That's fine, and if that's the case, but the next time we talk, we're going to tell you how to evaluate them. And we're going to tell you how to confirm that you are getting what you need to be successful from your advisor. And if you can't answer that question, if you can't say without a doubt, shout it from the mountaintop, I am getting the advice that I need, the level of my advice matches the level of the complexity of my situation, then Joe, what do we typically recommend?
Give us a call. Talk with us.
Give us a call or find a new advisor.
Well, and Ben, that's a good point. I was just thinking, one of the things I love about how you and I work with clients is when we first start engaging with somebody, part of what we want to do is we want to help them figure out what level they're at. So, when we talk with somebody new, part of the challenge is figuring out where are you, both for our sake and for their sake.
Yeah, Joe, I think that's why we built in a couple of really important steps in our process. We built in the 15-minute introduction call where we can just ask a couple questions and get a brief overview of somebody's situation, and then we build in a discovery session. If it's somebody who's on staff, it's typically 30 minutes. If it's a pharmacy owner or multiple business entrepreneur, it's typically 60 minutes to 90 minutes. We do those completely complimentary, Joe, because we have to get to know people where they are and what they need. I can't help people create a roadmap until we actually know where they are. Yeah. Joe, what's amazing is my father has this great quote. He says, sometimes we're like the airplane pilot who radios the control tower and says, "Yeah, I'm lost, but I'm making great time." We have to know where we are in order to get where we want to go. And that's so important. So that's why we spend those first couple sessions, and those are complimentary on us, guys. If anybody out here wants to have that experience and set up a 15-minute introduction call, you've got our email, you've got our cell phone numbers. If you want to go in and set up one of those discovery workshops where we actually dive a little bit deeper, reach out to us. We'll be happy to help you. So, Joe, last thing, I don't know if I've ever told you this or not, and did you know that a journey of 1,000 miles begins with just one step?
I did know that.
You did know that. How many times have I said that to you? And
almost 1,000 times now.
Almost 1,000 times.
I'm almost there. Yeah.
You're taking little steps, baby steps, baby steps. All right. Take the first step. Take the first step. You don't have to be normal. You don't have to settle for average or below average advice. you can have the advice that you deserve and that you need in order to achieve your goals. You do that by reaching out to us. You do not have to use us. I have to say this, you do not, but you need to find an advisor. There's only one way to guarantee you're going to get an advisor like that, and that is to call us. I can't tell you if you go hire somebody else if that advisor is going to meet that. But yeah, reach out to us. Get those 5 questions. Get a copy of the Spectrum. Set up the intro call or set up that workshop, that discovery session. We want to hear from you. So, Joe, any last words for everybody?
Have a wonderful week and figure out what level you're at.
Awesome, guys. Thank you guys so much. And look for part 2. Joe, that's coming out in the next couple weeks, and I look forward to getting that out to everybody. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Interested in learning more about maximizing your income and living a financially free lifestyle? Contact the Income Outcomes Show today to learn more about your financial possibilities and best practices in managing your money to create opportunities for lasting wealth. Go to pharmacypodcast.com under the contact section and send us a message, and we'll get back to you within 24 hours. Thanks for listening to the Income Outcomes Show, a podcast publication part of the Pharmacy Podcast Network.